Get home from school, turn on my TV. Who are these friends staring right back at me? Now that we're older, why don't you come over and go back in time with me? 90s babies nostalgia.
Hi, I'm Amanda.
And I'm Jessica, and this is 90s Babies Nostalgia, where two fully grown millennials rewatch and sometimes watch for the first time iconic tween entertainment from the early 2000s.
Just to be clear, we are not sponsored by or affiliated with anything that we talk about ever unless otherwise disclosed. And today, what we're talking about is New Year's Eve.
Eve.
And with that said, Happy New Year!
Yeah, this will come out right before the New Year, so we hope you have a lovely New Year's, a wonderful New Year's Eve, and if you do resolutions, that you're doing those, and if you don't, that's great too.
Yes. And so, with that said, instead of our usual, what are you enjoying? Jessica, what have you enjoyed the most in 2023?
I feel like a lot of things. Also, 2023 has had some, as I'm sure that was me moving my hand like a roller coaster
Some
on
ups
our.
and downs.
Yes, as I'm sure it has been that way for a lot of people. But most years, but especially this year, I would say the thing I enjoyed the most, no surprise to any of you, is concerts. Um, I keep a running list of the concerts I go to. I've been trying to. I used to when I was in high school, and then as I've gotten older, I have, in the last few years, especially post pandemic, I try to keep a list of all the concerts I go to because it's just fun memories to look back on. And so this year I've gone to over 30 concerts, which is crazy.
That's
And
actually
that
way fewer than I thought.
one of like that's some of those are festivals, multiple day festivals.
Mm-hmm.
And 30 is still more than 2 a month, which I feel like is a lot. Um, so I wanted to shout out my top 3 people that I saw this year. Obviously, like, I have liked so many of the people I saw this year, so this is just me narrowing it down, and not in any order. But if any of these people come to your city, I highly suggest you go out of your way to watch them live because they are amazing live performers. We have Giovanni and the Hired Guns. My second time seeing them live, Texas pop punk band, really, really amazing. Amigo the Devil, who I shouted out in our Halloween playlist episode. This is like my 4th or 5th time seeing him live. If you want a weird horror folk show where like people are moshing, but also he's playing the banjo and you're just in for a wild ride, go see him. He is phenomenal. And then I'm going to end with Wyatt Flores, who's up and coming in the folk red dirt country scene. He's from Oklahoma, based in Nashville now. This guy's going to be huge. Like, I think he's going to be one of the next Zach Bryans. Phenomenal songwriter, phenomenal singer. He's a little baby boy. He's only 22. So go give him a listen. What have you enjoyed this year?
Do I go conceptual or do I go tangible like you did?
Ooh, I like the idea of conceptual.
Well, I am very much a resolutions girly pop. I struggle because I write too many. I'm overly ambitious at the start of the new year and I try to make them tangible and then I forget within a couple of months, even though I keep track. But something I really wanted to focus on this year was stepping into my body. No, sorry, stepping into my power and connecting with my
Mm.
body
Mm.
and
Mhm.
channeling my divine femininity.
Mm.
So I don't know that I feel like I've done the latter, but I do feel like I've grown more confident this year by pushing
Mhm.
myself out of my comfort zone with friends, making friends, starting new hobbies. I feel like I have been connecting with my body by going to the gym and taking up pole, and in terms of my femininity, I've actually been kind of considering my gender more than ever before and changing up some of my style, even though my wardrobe mostly hasn't changed. And that's been like a very interesting journey for me. So I just feel like, yeah, overall, it's about taking the time to connect to yourself and understand who you are. So that's my
Mhm.
conceptual one.
I like that. I also feel
Thanks.
like part of that is like in that journey, you have taken up a lot of hobbies this year. And like as a friend, it's been very fun to like chat about those and watch you like experience taking up hobbies.
Thank you. I started this year saying I was going to do a big thing every single month. So I did go to a lot of concerts like you. Not nearly as many. I went to like, I don't know, a handful. I went on a couple of trips and stuff like that. But I did also fall off of like doing big things in the last couple of months because part of my connecting with myself and the hobbies and stuff and like that feels like a big thing every day almost to just
Mhm.
be like prioritizing living this life that I want to be living.
Mhm. Yeah. It
That said,
takes effort.
still watch a lot of TV and lay around on the couch most of the time though, but that's fine.
That's what this podcast is for too. So,
Absolutely. So with that said,
yeah. We are going to get into New Year's Eve. Guys, there's not really that many New Year's movies, so this is the one we're doing. Plus, I probably have seen it like 5 or 6 times. I don't
I
know about.
think this is the second time I've seen it.
Okay. So, this movie was released on December 9th of 2011. It is the second in an unofficial trilogy of rom-coms directed by Garry Marshall, and so that includes Valentine's Day and Mother's Day. Garry Marshall also directed Pretty Woman, Frankie and Johnny, Runaway Bride, and Princess Diaries 1 and 2.
Mhm.
This was a box office hit, even though the critics hated it. Um,
Hated it.
hated it.
More on that
Um,
later.
yeah. It grossed 142 million worldwide, but it opened at number one spot at the box office with 13 million in the first weekend.
Do you know what the budget was?
Oh, 50? I
I
did
was
look at it.
just
I want to say it's 52 or 56, but it's in the 50s range. It was pretty high.
okay. I was just wondering because this stacked cast, which is the point of this unofficial trilogy. Gary Marshall, as just said, one of the kings of the rom-coms. But these three, bef-
56 million was the
thank you.
budget.
Thank
Mhm.
you. These three, Valentine's Day, New Year's Eve, Mother's Day, were possibly his last cash grab right before his timely death in 2016 because they are just ensemble casts with overlapping storylines taking place on a holiday. I'm pretty sure they're inspired by Love Actually, which came out in 2003, except not as good. And that's coming
Mm-mm.
from someone who doesn't even love Love Actually.
Yeah, definitely not as good, but stacked
Which
cast.
is the point. They said, "We know you wanna see them. You all interact. Come to the theater, we got you." And that's how they made their money because they were right.
And with that stacked cast, we're going to intro some of the characters here. We have Claire, who works for the Times Square Alliance
Mhm.
and is kind of like what it seems like in charge of production of the ball drop event in New York City. And she's played by Hilary Swank.
We've got Stan Harris, who is a dying man who is on his final breath, and all he wants is to watch the ball drop from the roof. He's played by Robert De Niro, and he's in the hospital, refusing treatment.
Mhm. Yep. And at the hospital, we have Nurse Amy, who is Mr. Harris's main nurse, who is played by Halle Berry. And we have Stan's doctor, who I will let you introduce.
Yeah, he's a doctor. He's there. He's played by Carrie Elwes. I didn't know that. That's Wesley in The Princess Bride. I don't recognize my Wesley outside of his little mustache.
Yeah. Then we have Laura, who is played by Katherine Heigl.
Heigl.
Heigl. Um, she is a caterer, runs a catering business that does like large, prestigious events.
Even though she's a fairly new company.
Yeah, very confusing. And then we have Jensen, who's a rock star who is playing at a private party and at the ball drop event in Times Square, which feels like no one would hire you to do both in one night. But you know what? You go. And he is played by John Bon Jovi.
Then we have Randy. He's a hipster, probably in Bushwick, and he hates everything about New Year's Eve. And he is played by Ashton Kutcher.
Yep. And we have Elise, who lives in the same building as Randy, and she is a backup singer for Jensen. And she is played by Leah Michelle.
Then Ingrid, she is a mousy little woman who is scared to live life but really wants to. And she's played by Michelle Pfeiffer, who I did not recognize at all. Like, I've seen
Yeah.
Michelle Pfeiffer in things, but I did not recognize her in this. I feel like she's become
Yeah.
a chameleon in her old age.
I agree. I also was confused because I'm like, this is like the one person who is coming on screen that I'm like, oh, now this person showed up. Now this person showed up. And I'm like, who the heck is this? And I was like, what? It's Michelle Pfeiffer?
Mm-hmm.
Speaking of when people came up on screen, we have Paul, who is a courier. He's friends with Randy. And he is played by Zac Efron.
And then we have Tess Byrne, played by Jessica Biel. She's a pregnant woman about to give birth.
Yeah.
And her
And
husband.
then we have, her husband, Griffin Byrne, played by Seth Meyers. And then we have another group of people who are also getting ready to have a baby. And that is Grace Schwab and James Schwab, who are played by Sarah Paulson and Till Schweiger.
And I did not know Till Schweiger either.
Yeah, Schweiger.
He is one of the few that I didn't recognize in the cast, but he was in Inglourious Bastards, and he's German, so he's been in German stuff.
Like a ton of German stuff. So
and we
many.
have 15-year-old Seth, played by Jake Tiassen. You know who it is.
Yep.
And his little friend Haley, played by Abigail Breslin. You better know who she is.
Yep.
Fucking
and
love
then
Abigail Breslin.
Haley's mom, who's a single mom, is played by Sarah Jessica Parker. Her name's Kim. And then we get this like businessman who's a businessman. His name is Sam, and he is played by Josh Duhamel.
I literally just wrote him as like rich kid.
Yeah, that's the vibe too.
Because he works for his parents' business and he doesn't care. Anyway, other notable mentions, because this cast literally stacked. Like, there were people that I saw and I was like, wait a second, why? Like, Alyssa Milano is in the hospital as a nurse. She gets like 4 lines.
Yeah.
But she's there. Common is in this. Sofia Vergara is actually a pretty notable character in this. Ludacris, Luda, Ryan Seacrest as himself. Hector Elizondo, who is Joe from The Princess Diaries.
Oh.
Yeah. He was also in Last Man Standing for a long time. He's been in a lot of stuff, but he is in this as the handyman. Carla Gugino, who she plays Jessica Biel's OBGYN in this. She's the mom from Spy Kids. Peter Allen Vogt is not a name you would know, but he's the male nurse that's like kind of sassy, and he was in Hannah Montana and The Princess Diaries too, so he's one of those faces that I'm just like, I know that man.
Yeah.
Catherine McNamara makes a very brief appearance when she shoves her face in Jake T. Austin's. She's from Shadowhunters. Nat Wolff plays Jake T. Austin's best friend. Love him. Matthew Broderick, very randomly, is in this. I can't tell if he's the mayor of New York or if he's the president of the Times Square Alliance, but he is some sort of boss to Claire.
Got it.
So, yeah, there's a lot of people in this movie.
Yeah, this, like, when they went in and said, what we are delivering is a stacked cast. They really went for it because this cast is wild. And when you have this many people in a cast, this means that there's a lot of varying plot lines. So I grouped the summary based on kind of the separate stories that we see throughout the film. Of course, they intertwine, but just know that that's kind of how we're going to go through the summary. The movie opens up and we are in New York City, baby. And it is New Year's Eve and it is hustling and bustling. And the film kind of starts with putting in your mind the idea of New Year's and what New Year's Eve can bring, and that it's to celebrate the hope of like new beginnings, the new year, anything is possible. And so, our first kind of plot line of the movie is the Times Square Alliance and Ball Drop event. And so Claire arrives in Times Square. Everything is being set up, and we learn that she's the vice president of the Times Square Alliance. And she goes up to the ball, she flips the switch, she's testing to make sure everything's working out. All the lights turn on, so they're like, we are good to go for the 6 p.m. start time of the event. But at the start of the event, she flips the switch, the ball starts, doing its ascent, and about halfway up, it loses power and half the lights go out.
Yes, and it just stops.
Yeah, it just stops. And no one can fix it, apparently, even though there are a lot of people around, just no one is capable. And so they have to call in Kaminsky, who we learned worked on the ball for years and was recently fired for being too involved. And so he determines that a short is happening. So he has to test all the light panels to figure out where the short is occurring. And Claire, while this is all happening, she is forced to give an update to the public, and she gives this really like heartfelt speech about like New Year's is about getting another chance. And
She says the ball is paused on its ascent to make people reflect on the year that they've had, and before stepping into the new year, really remember all of the moments and blah. It goes on for like at least 2 minutes, and
yeah.
people act as if it's a very moving speech. I gotta be honest, I would have been a lot more moved if I didn't know she was talking out of her ass.
Oh, 100%. And you see like everyone watching her speech in their respective areas on their TV screens. Like they all are tuned in. She gets pulled aside, and we see the owner of the Times Square Alliance, and he's like, "You're not going to have a job next year, lady, if you don't figure this shit out," which is not helpful at all.
No, and that's Matthew
And-
Broderick.
Yeah, and also he tells her that she's letting down the entire world, which felt like a vast overstatement. And
Well,
Kaminsky,
I was just gonna
you
say the
think
world does watch the ball drop.
Sure, but there also are very notable New Year's Eve events across the world
I
besides
agree.
just the ball drop.
I agree.
Kaminsky fixes the ball. We get this funny scene where like he's still on top of it as they flip the switch, and he's like climbing up the ball as it's moving. And everyone is stoked, and the New Year's Eve event is on and back and running, and Claire offers him his job back.
Not just his job back, but also says, "Here you go. You can run the rest of the show. I'm out of here." Because her plotline intersects with the next one, which just labeled as My Dying Wish, which is Mr. Harris, Robert De Niro, talking to his doctor. "I've never asked you for anything. I said no treatments, no nothing. I need you. Do you know why I'm in this hospital? I'm in this hospital because the rooftop has a great view of the ball dropping, and I'm about to die, and that's what I want to see." And the doctor's like, "Yeah, I can't do that for you, but have a good nap." And then we get Nurse Amy coming in and keeping him company because she feels bad. He says he's been an asshole. No one ever visits him. And she's willing to like give up some of his or her plans to give him meds and palliative care, and like even sleeps in the chair next to him. And she does make this line about like maybe you got everything you wanted because you were an asshole, and I don't know about glorifying assholes, but anyway,
Yeah,
um,
I agree. Questionable choice.
she presses him about why he hasn't pursued treatment and says that just, he doesn't have anyone left, basically. And she gets off of work, changes into her dress. We see her on basically a video call with her army boyfriend who's serving in Iraq or Afghanistan, played by Common. And meanwhile, the other nurses are like, he's out of bed. And she's like, don't worry about it. Because Hilary Swank, his daughter, came and took him to the rooftop to watch the ball drop while he died.
Mm-hmm.
Sorry.
Yep.
That's what happened.
That's what happened. Then we get dating a rock star is a bad idea. We see Claire and Ava, who Ava is played by Eva Longoria, and is Claire's sous chef. And they're prepping for a big holiday party where Jensen will be performing. She's walking the kitchen, making sure all the stations are prepped and ready to go for the event. And Jensen, the rock star, shows up, and we kind of learn that they've had history. It doesn't seem like the ending was great. Laura slaps him. And that goes away, and then we see them again, and she slaps him again, clearly still very, very upset. And we learn that he proposed last New Year's Eve and then ran.
They were moving in together, and she says, I didn't even get to cook you a meal. You left before I came home with the first round of groceries.
Mm-hmm.
So clearly there's a lot of tension there, but they also try to call a truce, which I don't know how you do that, but sure.
Yeah. They call a truce, and she apologizes for slapping him, but only for the second one.
As she should.
Yeah, agreed. And he apologized for running away. And then he has the audacity to be like, come on tour with me.
And she's like, actually, I built this whole job for myself, so no?
Yeah. Yeah. And he's like, well, I'm ready to commit to you. And she's like, yeah, I chose a commitment, and that's my work. And so he's performing at this party it's the Ahern Masquerade Ball. It will come up in other plot lines.
It's hosted by his record label, which is also, it will come up later, but yeah.
Yeah, and so he comes out and he sings Have a Little Faith in Me, and is singing directly to her the whole time. And then Jensen is up for his performance in Times Square. No one can find him. They're searching for him. Eventually, Claire finds him, but has to give him a pep talk because he's just all in his feels and refusing to sing. And he's like, I really messed up. I don't deserve a second chance. And she went into her hope for the new year. The new year is all about second chances. Spiel that she gets on. And so while he's performing, we kind of see Laura in the kitchen dancing and singing along and vibing with the performance. And at the end of the night, Laura is straight up me in the kitchen, just shoving chocolate truffle after chocolate truffle into her mouth as fast as she can. And he's like, I'm canceling my tour. I'm never going to leave you again. You are the person I want to be with. I want to make it up for you. And then we see them kiss and dance at midnight.
Next, trapped in an elevator. Randy, the hipster that hates New Year's, is talking on the phone with Paul about how they're roommates, by the way. They're not going to do anything. They have no plans. Paul, you're working. I decided to stay home because I hate it. He goes through the hallway, taking down decorations that someone generously put up in the public space.
And very cute, very well done. They're just obviously they went to Party City or something. They're not fancy, but someone put effort. This wasn't crappily placed.
Yeah, for the community.
Yeah.
But he rips it all down and gets into the elevator to throw it out. He's in his pajamas, and in runs Elise, who is in a rush. But of course, immediately the elevator crashes. We love forced proximity as a trope. So they're stuck in there. And he at one point is lifting Elise to see if she can get through the hatch. And she's like, I'm going to file this thing with my nail file. And he sees her badge with Jensen's name on it. And he's like, oh, God, you're a groupie. And she's like, well, you're a fucking hipster who went to a liberal arts school and lives off of the dad's trust fund. And he's like, yeah, I am. She fucking nailed him. And then she sings Have a Little Faith with Me as well. There's a duet between her and John Bon Jovi, which is interesting. They take out the decorations, they decorate the elevator now, and have this very weird scene where they're pretending to count down
It's a
the
little
ball.
creepy. It's like role play.
It is, and it weirded me out, and they count down, and they're about to kiss, and then the elevator opens, the super opened it, we find out it's been down for 8 hours, they've been in there for 8 hours, so she
Think
has
about how hungry you would be.
I also didn't mention this, she's not a groupie, she tells him she's a background singer, and this is
Mhm.
her first time working with Jensen, and she was hoping that he would take her on tour with him. So, yes, you would be hungry. I also was thinking about, bladder, but
Oh, yeah.
she has to run off, but she runs off to Times Square, and Randy notices that she forgot her rubber bracelet. I
Mhm.
didn't even realize she had one. I don't know. This was a whole thing. And he chases after her. Somehow he makes it to the stage where she is at the same time as her, even though he
Yeah.
was clearly in a closing elevator. But um he shows up right before she's supposed to perform and is like, it's a balance thing, and I wanted you to have it, and also you forgot something else in the elevator, and kisses her, which was like a pretty good line. And
Yeah. It was
she
a pretty good line.
sings backup in Jensen's performance, and he watches from the crowd, and then when Jensen goes back to Katherine Heigl, Leah Michelle gets to sing Auld Lang Syne at midnight.
Then we get Resolution Adventure, which I feel like is one of the smaller plots, but it is kind of fun. Um,
Really?
you didn't like it?
No, I didn't think it was a small plot at all.
Oh, I did. I feel like it was just like little 30-minute scenes here and there splattered across the.
You mean 30-second scenes?
Yep.
I felt like it
Well,
was a bigger plot than Randy and Leah
hmm.
Michelle.
Mm. I don't know. I felt like that was on my screen longer than I wanted it to be.
Oh, it was still.
Ingrid's on her way to work and she has what she describes a near-death experience. A taxi almost hits her and she jumps back and she falls into a pile of trash and she is just frazzled and not having a good day. While at work, a courier comes to deliver a package, and that is Paul, who is Zac Efron. And weirdly, he like stands at her desk while she's opening up this package, which is like very creepy and definitely not in a courier's job duties.
And she also doesn't know who he is, and he's like, I've been delivering packages to you for years.
Yeah.
And it's just weird. Like, couriers don't have that kind of relationship with people.
No, like
If
what?
they work in the building, they do. But if it's just a random person,
Yeah, I would say to an extent, like when I was an office manager, we would get Costco business delivery, and the guy who delivered to our building was the same, and I would get it like, 3 times a month.
mhm.
So I had a relationship with him. We knew each other on a first name basis, but it wasn't like if he stopped to try to chat with me or like watched me unload my delivery, that would be fucking weird. And so she opens up her package, which is 4 passes to the Ahern masquerade party. And he is like, holy shit, that's so cool. I wish I had those. And then he leaves. She
Also
goes,
weird that sorry, it's weird that a courier had to bring her passes to this party when she is the assistant to one of the guys at this business.
yeah, she
Like
works
at
for
Ahern.
Ahern.
She works at Ahern.
Yeah, agree. Very strange. You would feel like they would just hand them out in like a staff meeting. She goes into her boss's office. She's like, what am I doing working on New Year's? Can I get my bonus? And it is way, way less than what she was expecting. And he mentions that, business hasn't been doing well, even though they're literally having this giant ass party where they're probably spending tens of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of dollars to put it on. and she was planning on using her bonus to go on this 2-week trip that she got approved. And he's like, who approved a 2-week trip? Not me. You can get a week off. And so she quits.
Mm-hmm.
And she hires Paul for the day, which also is not how a courier service works.
No.
But
It's how an escort service works.
correct. Which would probably cost a lot more than a courier. And he is going to help her check off her list of resolutions, which I would argue are not resolutions and are a bucket list.
Yep.
And in exchange, she will give him the 4 passes to the masquerade party. And they're running around New York City creating all these resolutions. Take a taxi with no traffic, go to Bali, save a life. And he's getting really creative. Go to Bali, he takes her to a spa.
A Bali spa.
Uh-huh.
Save a life, she adopts a rescue dog.
Cat. No, it's a dog.
Thank you.
I don't know. In my head, I thought it was, but no, it's for sure dog. While all of this is happening, Paul calls Randy and is like, we are going out. I'm getting these 4 passes. I met this woman. She's a little pathetic, but we get to go to a cool ass party. She overhears it. And so she walks away from him because she's like, what? If you think I'm pathetic, why are you even helping me with this? He comes back and they continue to finish off the resolution list with Be Amazed, in which he takes her to the Radio City Music Hall where there's no events happening. What? On New Year's Eve. And like straps her into the harnesses and has her like fly across the stage.
Mm-hmm.
She gives him the tickets. They go their separate ways. And at midnight, he comes back and gives her a kiss. And she's like, what are you doing? You are half my age. And he's like, I'm helping you check off the final resolution, which is be kissed at midnight.
Which, if she hadn't checked off the final resolution, why did she give him the passes? That was the whole deal.
Yeah, I don't.
Anyway, so that's their plot line. First baby on New Year's is so funny. So at the maternity ward, we get Seth Meyers and Jessica Biel, who is pregnant as all hell. She's got a full watermelon under that dress, and they are not yet ready for labor, but they meet the Schwabs there, the German guy, and Sarah Paulson, who hilariously is not playing a lesbian for the first time I've ever seen. And they are talking about how the first baby born in the new year gets $25,000 because healthcare famously has a lot of money to give out. And Jessica Biel and Seth Meyers are like, we could pay off our student loans, which is just so real, except I have way more than $25,000 in loans.
Sure.
But so these two couples start getting competitive. Both of them are sent home because they're not ready. They're both trying to do stuff on the internet that says they'll induce labor, like eating anchovies or doing yoga. And then
drinking castor oil.
Yes. And back at their home, her water does break and they rush in a fucking rickshaw to the hospital because they can't get a real taxi. And also the Schwabs are there as well because Sarah Paulson's water also broke. And the babies, they're both, so like they're in adjoining rooms with like a door in between and they can see through. And Seth Meyers is like, yes, this is perfect. I can see everything. And his wife is like, actually, oh my God, I'm pulling a fucking Cadillac out of a goddamn compact parking space right now. I don't give a shit about the money. And so he becomes a good dad and husband and supports her. And then it turns out the Schwabs was born at 12:05 and it's the third girl in their family. And the dad looks real sad. And so Seth Meyers lies and says that their baby was born a minute after, even though it was born before.
Then we get Let the Teenagers Kiss, which was Amanda's favorite of my titles that I created. There's this group of teenagers, and we see Seth and Haley, and they're kind of flirting, and Haley's like, oh, I think I'm going to kiss him at midnight. And she goes home, where we see Kim, who is like, yeah, my plans tonight are just to stay home, watch a movie with my daughter. And so Haley's like, actually, Mom, can I go to the ball drop? And her mom is like, no, you can't go.
You're
Like,
too young, stay home. I
yeah,
fought for custody.
yeah. And so then Seth is like, what if I convince your mom? And so then he goes and he's like, we're basically young adults. We're not kids. And she's like, okay, so I'll call your mother. And then he's like, nope. And that's the end of that.
At home, they get in a fight, and Haley dramatically runs out the window and down the fire escape.
Yeah. And weirdly, Kim notices right away. And so they are like not that far off each other, but she gets on the subway, closes the door, and Kim is arriving right as the subway is pulling away. Kim ends up calling Paul, who's Zac Efron, who's her brother, and is like, hey, I know Haley thinks you're the cool uncle. Can you tell me where she's at? And he's like, as long as you don't rat me out. And so then Kim is still trying to find where Haley is. Haley arrives. Also, I'm like, I feel like she got on the subway like hours before midnight, but she arrives right at midnight and she sees Seth kissing another girl. And so she runs away crying straight into her mom's arms. And later, Seth's like, hey, we got these tickets to a after party at the Hard Rock. And Kim's like, okay, I guess you can go. And Haley's like, why were you kissing the other girl? And then they end up kissing.
And then he's like, I wasn't. She kissed me just like this, and kisses her. And also of note, because Sarah Jessica Parker's siblings with Zac Efron, that's how he gets the Radio City hookup, because she's a costume tailor person at Radio City.
Mm-hmm.
Yes. Now we have Met Once Last New Year's Eve, starring Sam, the son of Ahern Records people. He's the best man for his friend's wedding in Connecticut, where no one else has come. He is the only witness, basically. And it's this great stereotype of he is the last man single from his friend group and therefore the last one in Manhattan, because everyone gets married and moves out to Connecticut. And immediately after, he needs to return to New York City for work and just crashes into a snowbank. He has a tow truck who is not helpful, but he's the dad from 10 Things I Hate About You, and he's hilarious. And then all the mechanics are closed, but the tow truck brings him to a pastor and his family who are going to New York City with an RV to see the Rockettes, which are at Radio City where nothing was happening in Paul's storyline. And they let Sam ride on their RV, where it's just like a very nosy family and their kids, and they're all asking about, what's your speech going to be about at your work? And he's like, I don't know, I haven't written it yet. And why are you rushing to get back? And we learned that actually last year he met a girl at a restaurant and they kissed at midnight. And he really liked her because she said something that he thought was profound, even though it was kind of mid. And he went to the bathroom, and when he came back, there was a napkin that said, like, I have a lot going on right now, but meet me back here in a year. And so that's really what he's going back for, not the speech.
Mm-hmm.
But he goes to the New Year's Eve party at the AM party to give a speech, and then he leaves to find the girl, but the restaurant has closed, and he just kind of stands around for a while, and
Yeah.
then eventually a carriage comes up with a poorly treated horse, I'm sure, and
Yep.
Sarah Jessica Parker comes down, and they kiss.
And then it ends with a line about how New Year's Eve is all about hope and a great party. And that is our movie.
Thank you so much, Jessica, for segmenting the plots. And I'm saying thank you on behalf of the listeners, because if you had not done that, this would have made no sense.
Oh, yeah. You should have seen my notes. I told Amanda this already, but a lot of my notes were Wizard's Guy is trying to kiss Haley, and also then Glee does this, and Glee is stuck in the elevator, and Glee is now singing.
I wrote Robbie Boy thinks Hallie is Sig Other.
Yep.
Which was Robert De Niro thinks Halle Berry is his significant other. Because there's a point where he's delusional talking to his nurse as if She's his wife. But like, yeah, our notes are ridiculous, and there's so much overlap of like this person knows this person, but like it's kind of unnecessary.
Completely, right? The whole thing is the whole world is coming together to celebrate this one thing, and that's what makes it great. So we're going to show like how all of these storylines intertwine with one another, but it is so unnecessary. It makes it so convoluted, and it makes it so you don't really get character development
Mm.
on any of these plots, even though you have such great actors.
Yeah, you don't get character development. You don't even really get who they are as people, and you get a lot of melodramatic lines.
Totally. Um, with this, I wanted to say I have seen this a few times. I kind of assumed that this was a success because I knew it made a lot of money. But it is like considered like a failure in the critics' eyes. And a lot of people are like, why did you bring all these great people together to make them do nothing? Which is really kind of what happens. Um, it has a 7% approval on Rotten Tomatoes. And yep, not 70, not 17, 7%. I do want to clarify that's on the critics. The audience approval rating on Rotten Tomatoes is 45%, but that's still crazy low.
Yeah. It was also nominated for 5 Razzie Awards, which if you
Mm,
don't know are the awards, they're like Raspberry Awards.
mm,
They're for really bad films.
yeah. Yeah, so it was nominated for Worst Picture, Worst Director, Worst Actress for Sarah Jessica Parker, which I thought was kind of mean.
Mhm.
Worst Screenplay and Worst Ensemble, but it actually lost all of them to Adam Sandler's Jack and Jill.
Which is kind of funny because he is the cast of both Jack and Jill.
Mhm.
If you get worst cast and you're the only cast member.
Yeah, yeah. Do you have anything else on how terribly received this film was?
I don't really think Sarah Jessica Parker was the worst actress in this film,
I
but
don't think so either.
she also wasn't the best. I don't know. It was a
Fair.
film that I watched. I enjoyed it.
Yeah, me too. I do have to know, I'm gonna try to find it for the podcast so Amanda can put in a photo, or I'll try to put it on our Instagram. But in this film, because it's 2011 going into 2012, a lot of people at Times Square are wearing these really tall navy blue Nivea, which is like the lip balm company. Well, and they also do other skincare hats. And I have a photo of me wearing this hat because I actually went to this ball drop 2011 into 2012. So I really want to find a photo of it because
I
I
ac-
know they exist.
I actually love that they got the sponsor correct. Like, do you
Yeah,
think that Nivea also, because I was looking at this like Nivea and Panasonic, the product placement was wild, but then you commented this and I was like, wait, was this product placement or was it just like accuracy?
so my thing is this came out ahead of time. So I'm like this because it came out December 9th, 2011. So when they were filming it, they must have known like
Mm-hmm.
either the agreement with the sponsors were already in place by the time it was filming, or when they were filming it, they made sure that the sponsors were also the same for the same year, which I thought was pretty impressive.
Yeah, same.
Um, when Leah Michelle is singing in the elevator, like, because Ashton Kutcher is like drawing because he's like, oh, I'm a comic artist. And so he's drawing and he's doing it like how you would sit when you're trapped somewhere. He's just sitting on the floor, drawing his journal, minding his whole ass business. Instead of her sitting there and just singing to him, she is acting like she is in a music video. She is like up against the wall of the elevator and she's like flipping her hair and like being seductive and like, I'm like, what is happening here?
She's leaning against a wall like it's a window.
Yeah. Yeah. Ashton Kutcher also changes when he's ripping out on the decorations and is being a Grinch. He changes the sign that says Happy New Year into Crappy New Year. And I thought that was both clever and funny.
I really liked it.
Also, there's this scene where Claire needs to go test the lights on the ball. And so she has to climb up the staircase, but she's extremely afraid of heights. So they have a police officer just like throw her over his shoulder and
Like
carry her
firemen
all,
carry her, yeah.
yeah, all the way up the stairs. And part of me is like, if you're afraid of heights, like, yes, it would be scary to walk up those stairs, but what would be more terrifying is being at the top looking out onto everything.
My thing was that everyone was like, "How are you gonna be in charge of the ball drop if you're afraid of heights?" And her best friend Luda the cop, ACAB, goes, "That's why I think she's the perfect person." And then has his friend come fireman carry her. And I'm like, that doesn't make any damn sense, Ludacris.
Yeah.
And
What?
there's no correlation, really. She could just take these meetings from the ground.
You have a fun fact about this, which I think is hilarious.
I did too.
They're testing the confetti at Times Square, and it's just like a bunch of dudes throwing confetti off a rooftop. And I was like, that is not how this would work. It would be confetti cannons. And
Mhm.
Amanda has corrected me.
No, because I thought the same damn thing. I was like, why the fuck are they doing it manually? There's no way they do this manually. But I looked
Yeah.
it up because this film set me on another wiki spiral, which I'm very good at. And I almost had more fun facts that were not related to this film and more so about Times Square and the history of New York. However, this one, I can tell you, every year for New York City, New Year's, they drop at least 3,000 pounds of confetti by hand with a group of 80 to 100 volunteers that stand on the roof. And this is because I didn't write down his name. But there was a guy who was like the king of balloons who was big into like visual effects. He worked at Disney for a while and he was hired to do some sort of drop type thing at the ball drop, like something to commemorate it. And he was like, everyone does fireworks, no one does confetti. This hasn't been done. And he felt like this was in like the 80s, but he felt like
Okay.
machines could not disperse the confetti in like as pretty of a way, basically the
Okay.
amount and the progression of it as humans. So to this day he has humans do it.
Huh.
Uh-huh.
Interesting.
Seems
Another thing,
absolutely ridiculous.
so dumb. Another thing that made me crack up is while they're at Times Square, there's just a random woman and a random child that's like, I don't know where my mom is. And she's like, I lost my son. And then they like crowd surf this child back to the mom.
I really like that point too. It felt
um,
real, to be honest.
no, well, actually, I thought based on how big that crowd was and how big the crowds get, it
Mhm.
make like that was the most efficient way to get that child back to its mother.
Mhm.
Like, um, Laura cuts pineapple for I swear 3 hours.
I
Like
did not
what?
notice this.
Oh my god! We go see other plot lines and we go back to Laura. She's cutting pineapple. Other things happen. Ava's running around. What is Laura doing? Cutting pineapple. Jensen goes and sings. She watches him, and then we flash back to her in the kitchen. What is she still doing? Cutting damn pineapple. I'm like, can we have her do anything else?
That's so funny. I wonder if they just didn't have Katherine Heigl for very long, and so they didn't want to change out props and settings. But that still doesn't seem like something that would take that long to change out.
Like, I don't, even to me, I'm like, maybe she is working on fruit this long, but like, throw in a watermelon. Maybe have her
Yeah,
cut some cantaloupe. Like, why is it the same fruit the entire time?
for sure. I liked the plot twist. I thought it was a little twist. I don't know if you did, but I for a while because we've got Sam, the rich kid, talking about how he's
Mm.
going to go meet this girl. And then we've got Hilary Swank talking about how she has a meeting. She doesn't really want to talk about it to Ludacris. And I thought it was going to be them. Did you think it was going to be
Mm,
them? Oh, no, you've seen this before. I thought it was
I've
going to be
seen
them.
this before, so I knew what it was. But I do agree, it does kind of lead you to believe, like, who is Sam going to meet? It could be Hilary Swank, or it could be Sarah Jessica Parker.
Yeah, because we don't really know anything about Sarah Jessica Parker other than she's a single mom who fought for custody and
Mhm.
has a terrible teenage daughter. Some other fun facts I have, this isn't a thing you don't like as well. Um, it really bothered me that the ball got stuck halfway up that they tried raising it at 6 p.m. The ball is not up full year round. It is on the pole year round, I believe. And
Yeah.
they raise it to its full height by mid December. And I know because I work near Times Square and I walk past it every day. And by mid December, when it's up, the tourists will stop and block all of the fucking sidewalks just looking at it. So
Yeah.
also, I was very surprised the Times Square Alliance is a real thing and it really is in charge of the ball drop.
Yeah, that doesn't shock me. Feels like something that would be real.
I thought it would be something like the mayor's office is in charge of, or some an
Yeah,
alliance felt weird, but I guess
sure.
New York City does love its like community boards. So I have a question for you. What do you think is the
Yeah.
best storyline?
Mm. Best or my favorite?
Yeah, which one did you enjoy the most?
Mm. Maybe Claire's. I have to be honest, I don't know if I enjoyed any of them that much, but I think maybe I enjoyed Claire's the most. But I also really, really actually did like the um Paul and Ingrid storyline. How about you?
For me, it's Paul and Ingrid, 100%.
Yeah.
I think it's the most fun. I think it's the only one that's not romance based off the top of
Hmm.
my head. Well, I guess there's Claire and her dad. I did not like Claire. Don't give a fuck.
Mm.
Paul is fun. Paul has the hookup. How does Paul have the hookup? How does That's one of my notes down here. How does Paul know literally everywhere to go and have all of the hookups?
Well, okay, so part of it is he's a courier, so he has access to his own water taxi to be able to deliver packages. But yes, I agree he has many other hookups and he has like extreme knowledge of the city, which makes sense because he's a courier. But also I'm like, you're telling me you deliver packages to the Bali spa?
And also, couriers are like heavily localized in New York City usually.
Which makes sense because it's hard to get around.
Yeah. I
Huh.
I wrote another question because when the couple is getting married in Connecticut, the officiant says you may give kisses to the missus. And I wrote, what would you do if your officiant said that? And have you ever heard an officiant say that as a former professional wedding planner?
I have never, ever, ever heard an officiant say that, especially because this was in a church. So it would be very traditional and that would never happen. Yeah, that's strange. Also, like, if I heard an officiant say that, I would never recommend that officiant as a vendor. I'd be like, off the vendor list. This person's weird.
I did think they did like New York City geography pretty well.
Mm,
Like they some of the stuff I was like, LOL, not real. I don't know. Sometimes like when I saw a sign that said subway and it didn't say which stop, but the Abigail Breslin and Sarah Jessica Parker, because I can't remember character names because they don't matter. They live
mhm,
in Brooklyn because the stop they're at is Myrtle Ave, which is a pretty common stop. Not
mm.
super into Brooklyn, but it's yeah. Um, and the hospital line about you there's a good view of the ball drop. I looked up that hospital because I was like, I'm pretty sure that one's further downtown, but they have multiple sites and they do have one that's only a couple blocks from.
Oh, cool.
I don't know that it's one where you could die because it seemed like an emergency hospital,
Got it.
not hospice. Uh,
Yeah.
the only thing that they didn't do well to me was the back and forth of Bon Jovi because I don't know officially where the party is happening, but I can tell you the outside shot of them entering it is the Brooklyn Museum, which is near
Mm,
Prospect Park. And it takes about 30 or 40 minutes to get there on the train from Manhattan. And already to get into Midtown on New Year's, like people are lined up in the morning to get
yeah.
into Times Square, and there's no exits. Like you're not
Yeah.
allowed to go in and out. So getting between the 2 like that, that is highly unrealistic.
Yeah. Also, just like how there's this giant entryway into where they're like the kitchen where they're catering this party, and the tour bus is just like casually parked. And I'm like, that is not how that would work. Like, there would be a loading dock, it would have to move elsewhere. Like, when you're in big cities, you can't just like park large vehicles wherever you want.
Sometimes the loading docks are on regular streets because there's not a lot of space here.
Okay, that's
Like,
fair.
we set up we Bryant Park has a big winter village that was recently set up with a lot of vendors. A lot of the parks have winter villages right now. And to set it up, like, it's a narrow main street near Times Square that's a one-way, and like vast majority of it gets full of big trucks that are there to set it up, and like you could
Hmm,
barely fit a compact through that road.
got it.
But still, there are loading docks in places, especially at museums.
Yeah,
Better Days by Goo Goo Dolls slaps. Slaps is a song.
yeah, yeah.
Played
Honestly, do have to
around
say
the
that
climax.
I wouldn't say best soundtrack ever, but pretty decent soundtrack.
Cracked me up when Bon Jovi was singing his own song that was not a song made for this film.
Yep.
Cracked me up even more that Leah Michele duetted it with him.
Sure.
This was 2011, guys. People cared about Leah Michele a little bit, and Leah Michele cared about Leah Michele.
Yeah.
Things we don't love as much. We talked about the ball. I didn't love teenagers kissing without consent. Happened twice.
Yeah, didn't love that. Especially the midnight one. I was like, this is making me extremely uncomfortable.
It was both ways. Like, she plants it on him and then he does it right back. I didn't love that.
Yeah.
I also didn't love that Bon Jovi is 16 years older than Katherine Heigl.
Yeah.
Like, I know
And
we're
it's
all
kind of obvious, and you're like, wow, he's really old.
exactly. That's my thing. Is like, I know they're full grown adults and it's acceptable and fine, but it looks wrong.
Yeah. Yeah. He wrote him quitting his job as a rock star is not a solution, which I completely agree. Because he full on is just like, I'm canceling the tour, which, like, your
Millions
record
of dollars.
label- also, they wouldn't let you do that.
Well, if you're the headliner and you pull out, I think contractually they could probably do something, but they can't force you to participate.
Sure, I guess.
But yeah, like, the way that she chose her career, I get it. I respect it. I love it for a woman. But this is a catering company and he's a rock star who just headlined New Year's Eve and he has a tour planned. And he goes, I'm not going to go on tour. Are you not going to go on tour forever? Did you not work for decades for your career?
Yeah. Well, also, like, he could go on tour and they could set up a plan of, like, on my days off, I'm going to come back home, or when you don't have gigs, or when you don't, yeah, when you don't have catering gigs, I'll fly you out. Right? Like, there were other solutions for them to try their relationship again that didn't involve him quitting being a rock star.
Yep. Didn't like it.
Mm-hmm.
No one's like, okay, the scene where Ingrid asks for her bonus, that doesn't happen that way. Companies send out emails a month in advance about what the bonus is going to be like. They talk about it in meetings, and then it gets direct deposited. I know this is 2012. They're still going to direct deposit it in 2012. It's only a decade before, guys. And yet, she just walks into her office and says, "Hey, could I have my bonus?" And he scrambles and writes her a check. That felt illegal.
Yeah, I would have to say what you're describing here is big companies, and this is a record company. It looks large, like pretty large. However, I know, like, the company my dad grew up working for, still it would be cut from a company check, but they would just hand them checks for their,
Yes.
and it wouldn't be emailed out. It wasn't formalized. It wasn't like, so there are smaller companies that do operate a bonus structure that is a little more lax, but I do agree that this one felt unrealistic for the record company size.
Yes, you're correct. Like, my dad works for a company like that as well. But
Yeah.
this, considering they are throwing this massive party,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. Hundreds. My guess is that event was $250,000 to put on.
That's a good guess. I know nothing.
It looked maybe 2011 a little cheaper. I don't know. But I'm like, that was a giant fucking ballroom for them to rent out on New Year's Eve.
I mean, if it was the Brooklyn Museum, that's a huge museum.
Literally.
Another thing that felt illegal to me was having a
I didn't
15-year-old
love
girl
this.
flash her bra in the middle of a busy subway set. there's a line where Abigail Breslin is like, "This is not a training bra," and she lifts up her multiple layers to show her bra to her mom, and they're literally entering the subway in what looks like Grand Central Station. Like, there's a lot of people going in and out, and that felt weird. Like it's comedic, but it's also like a 15-year-old girl would be way too self-conscious to do that, and also the actress was told to do that, which I don't love.
Yeah, also what I didn't love is a line that followed up after that is the mom goes, "This isn't Girls Gone Wild," which I
Mhm.
did not like that we were then
Why?
calling that out in relation to a teenage girl.
Mm.
Like, to me, it was the secondary line that actually made me more uncomfortable than the situation itself.
I forgot about Girls Gone Wild. I totally saw ads for that growing up.
Mhm.
When they're riding around, when they go to the spa, it's like in a warehouse, and Ingrid says, what is this neighborhood? Is it safe?" They're literally in Dumbo. If you don't know, Dumbo is right past the Brooklyn Bridge, and it looks at Manhattan, and it is one of the most expensive neighborhoods in Brooklyn and in the
Oh my
city.
god. Oh my god.
It's like Williamsburg. It's very, very expensive. Okay. Okay. You're probably wondering what this note means, right?
Yeah.
So I wrote Ryan Seacrest peeve. This is not a peeve with Ryan Seacrest. Don't get me wrong. I don't give a shit about Ryan Seacrest. Either way. He seems fine. I don't know. Maybe he's an asshole. Probably. But my peeve is when media acknowledges one celebrity as their identity, but not other celebrities. So, like in this film, Ryan Seacrest is playing himself and he is hosting the New Year's Eve party. However, he is surrounded by a cast of other celebrities who are not playing themselves and do
Mm.
not know Ryan Seacrest. And that kind of shit bothers me because I'm like, I'm watching this. It has to be in an alternate reality where like these people are not famous, but then he is. So they're like in an alternate reality of our world where Ryan Seacrest is still famous, but the rest of them aren't. And that's weird. And I don't like that.
That's fair. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Because it is, yeah, it's almost like you're like in a world inside a world inside a world. Like, it feels strange.
Yeah, I'm like, I need to be in a completely different world for a film, but they're now in my world, but not fully in my world. You can't step a toe in, okay? It's got to be the whole foot.
That's fair.
Did you notice that no one was wearing a mask at the mask party?
You know, I didn't write a note about this because I did not realize until you wrote that. But yeah, it's a fucking masquerade ball, and I feel like I saw one mask.
Yeah, I saw like maybe 3.
Yeah.
And they even made a whole spiel about it being a mask party.
Mm-hmm.
Okay,
Yeah.
so plot lines.
Quotes.
Plot lines suck in this film, not gonna lie, but there were a lot of great one-liners.
Yeah. A lot of fantastic quotes. I think this one comes from the kind of like holistic doctor that is helping the Burns with their birth.
Carmen
And
Cugina.
yeah, you are disturbing her calm zone. And then one of my favorite is Ashton Kutcher is on the phone with Zac Efron, and he's like, "You're a Debbie Downer. Get over your anti-New Year's Eve kick. Like, this is stupid." And he goes, "It's not a kick. It's a core tenet of my being."
Which, by the way, melodrama, guys, he just hates it because a girl broke his heart on New Year's.
Yeah, yeah. Um, Also, there was a bald man who said this statement at one point, and I don't remember the context.
I
But
have no idea.
he went, "I never understand." It's so funny. It's so stupid. I never understand people with hair.
Was this the tow truck driver? This sounds like a line he would say. And he
Maybe,
is bald.
maybe, but I just thought it was funny.
A line that was not comedic, but I really enjoyed is when 15-year-old Abby is yelling at her mom. She says, "The world doesn't scare me. It's just getting good. I want to start living in it."
Oh, yeah, I loved that too. And she delivered it like so passionately. You could tell it. I don't know, it gave me 15-year-old energy when she said it.
It gave me Abigail Breslin is eating this up.
Yeah. Yeah.
And around this time, the same rant, she says, "Does the whole world scare you, or is it just New York because it's a big scary city?" And this guy walking by them, because they're in a fucking subway station, this guy walking by him just offhandedly says, "You ever been to Newark?" Which,
Yeah.
fucking dumb line, but cracked me up.
Yeah, yeah.
Like, Newark, New Jersey.
Yep.
I thought you would like this line.
Mm-hmm.
When they're on the RV, Sam, the rich kid, that he said he needs to write a speech, but he's not inspired. And so this lady asks, "What inspires you?" And he says, "Pizza."
Pizza.
Like, this is a man in his 30s.
Which honestly, Amanda knows this because I went to New York last fall, and I would argue the things that inspire me a lot about New York is the food,
Mm-hmm.
specifically pizza and bagels. And so if you are visiting NYC frequently or you're working in there, I would argue that pizza is inspiring.
It is a stereotype that is accurate.
Oh yeah, it's so good.
I have to say, stacked cast as it was, there were only a couple true comedians, and the writers knew exactly who they were,
Mm-hmm.
because Seth Meyers and Jessica Biel got all of the comedy, just all of
Mm-hmm.
it. Every
Mm-hmm.
single line they delivered was hilarious, and it hit, but, like, no one else had intentionally funny lines, and then theirs were just like quip, 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 quip. Like, did Seth write this himself?
Yeah, it was so good. I loved this first one you wrote, which she's sitting on the couch and she's like, "Oh my god, my water broke." And he's like, "All of it?" She's like, "Yes." He's like, "Can you turn it off?"
As soon as her water breaks, he's clearly out of it and he cannot comprehend the situation. So then he goes, "We gotta go downstairs where the cars live."
Yeah. He's like grabbing the bag and she's like, "Are you gonna wait for me? Like, don't you
She says,
want to?"
"I'll meet you there."
Yeah.
And he goes, "You should come with me." As if it's like a
Yeah.
new idea.
Yeah.
When they're checking into the hospital, with the other uh dad also there, they're being asked about um how far apart contractions are. So they answer, and then the nurse goes, "Cervix," and Seth goes, "She has one."
Yeah.
And then the
Yeah.
nurse just looks at him and they say the inches or millimeters dilated, centimeters.
Yep.
And then I said this one earlier, but it really cracked me up when she was in labor and she goes, "I'm trying to squeeze a fucking Escalade out of a goddamn compact parking spot."
Which honestly, I think that is the best like metaphor for birth because that, well, vaginal birth, because that literally is what it seems like.
Yeah, 100%. And then my last one was just, there was this really random moment, Jess is dying, where there was a Spanish TV interviewer asking someone related to the New York Alliance something in Spanish, and he just goes, "I'm sorry, I don't speak Spanish. I'm from Ohio." And then
Yeah.
she repeats that in Spanish because you hear Ohio.
Yep.
It was just the delivery was great, guys. Just trust
Hmm.
us.
Hmm.
So, Jess, what are your final thoughts?
I honestly think if you were looking for like a cheesy rom com with a stacked cast and you want to put something on, like it is a really fun watch. Is it an amazing film? No. Is the writing phenomenal? No.
No.
But it is like just kind of like a cozy, like great rom-com to just throw on. Um, that you're gonna recognize a lot of faces, which is kind of what they were doing. So like they met what their goal was, you know?
I remember when these films started coming out, when Valentine's Day and New Year's Eve came out, because we were in high school, and it was a huge deal. It was this, for some reason it was a huge phenomenon for us, and like so crazy to see all of these big stars interact.
Yeah.
So I definitely remember the hype.
Me
This was a
too.
moment in time.
Yeah, and I think we probably will. I personally have never seen Mother's Day. I've seen Valentine's Day more than New Year's Eve. So I think maybe we'll go and do at least that one. Maybe we'll cover the whole trilogy. Um,
I haven't seen
Mostly
either of
because,
them.
oh, I really just want to talk about the Taylor Lautner and Taylor Swift scene from Valentine's Day.
Of course, I want to see it.
Yeah. Anything else?
I agree with what one review said, which was It's not a great film, but it's an easy way to pass, like, a holiday evening. Like
100. Yes. That is
yeah.
it serves that purpose so well.
I was only really cringing at some of the really dramatic lines, which mostly came out of Katherine Heigl's mouth, and I don't
Mhm.
blame her for that. I blame the writers who decided her character was gonna speak like that.
Yeah.
But, um, yeah, for not being a great film, it wasn't a painful watch. It was just, like, an enjoyable way to pass time.
Totally.
Yeah.
Um, Up next, guys, strike is over, as you know, and we are coming back with Disney Channel content. And we are feeling a little nervous about it because we're like, did we forget how to do our own podcast? Potentially. Um, but we are going to do Sweet Life with Zach and Cody next. So we are stoked on this. We're excited to get back into the Disney Channel stuff, and we hope you are too. And probably bear with us for the first couple episodes as we get our footing on how to frickin' do Disney Channel again.
I'm excited and I'm mostly scared because I have so much TV to watch again, and I can't just watch Smosh videos and Love Island Games compilations anymore. But that's okay because this is what we're here for and it'll be
Mhm.
fun.
Yeah, it will be. As always, rate and review us on Apple Podcasts and Spotify. Follow us on Instagram and YouTube at 90s Babies Nostalgia. Spell out the word 90s. But on TikTok, use the numbers. Interact with us, comment us, tell us your thoughts on New Year's Eve. We love chatting with you all. And with that, we'll see you in the next one.
Bye.
Bye.